back, everybody, to another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. So most of us in the prepared citizen or preparedness community, modern Minuteman, gun enthusiast, whatever you want to call it, most of us probably have something that we would consider our fighting rifle, our go-to platform that if SHTF were to happen, if crap hits the fan, Russians fall from the sky, whatever, our grab-and-go gun that we're going to go do most jobs with, like our GPR, our general purpose rifle, our fighting rifle, whatever you want to call it, right? Most of us probably have something set up in a similar manner. We probably have an AR-15 chambered in 5.56, or for you AK guys, you might have one of those in 5.45 or 7.62 by 39, something like that. But most of us probably have some type of AR-15 variant, some flavor of this, maybe an MCX or an AR-180, something like that. But a generally AR-15-ish platform, chambered in 5.56, with a LPVO or red dot combo or some variation thereof, maybe a red dot magnifier, whatever fits your fancy. This one happens to be my Daniel Defense. I'm running a 16-inch barrel with a Yankee Hill Turbo K, Surefire scout light on here. Got a Romeo 5 on top of my Vortex 1-6. I want to say it's the Viper. I can't remember. Anyway, all together, I've got this thing set up here. This is kind of my go-to GPR. Now, most of us will probably be running something like this in 5.56. However, I'm here to advocate today for changing things up a little bit and switching to a battle rifle, and I'll tell you why. But first, speaking of cool guns, cool kit, and plenty of ways to keep that gun fed, check out United States Association of Gun Owners. Link down below. Try them out today. Check out the link below for some awesome deals and discounts. So first, let's get this out of the way. I am not dogging on AR-15s in any way. I own plenty of them. I shoot plenty of them. If things hit the fan, this is probably what I'm going to grab. But I do think it is important to think outside the box. And I think the 308 battle rifles have a lot to offer, whether you're running it as a primary or as a secondary or a specialty role, anything like that. And I'm here to advocate today on why you should get the 308 battle rifle. So let's go ahead and break that down. So first, let's establish what a battle rifle is and what a battle rifle isn't. What a battle rifle isn't, in my opinion, is a 5.56 platform. I have heard people make the argument that a 20-inch barrel 5.56 qualifies as a battle rifle. I see where you're going with that as far as the higher velocity of the 5.56 cartridge coming out of a 20-inch barrel, much larger size, things like that. But for our purposes, a battle rifle is going to be chambered in 308. If you have one in a, in a 30 caliber cartridge or something like that, maybe like a, surplus gun, something like that, it's in a different cartridge. Sweet, cool, kind of weird. But most of them, as we all know, are going to be coming in 308. So with that, we have a ton of variety. The Cold War was a wonderful time to offer us tons of weapons platforms, things like the HKG-3, the FAL, M14, various other platforms out there in 308 as well. So we're going to take a look at two simple options, kind of on the more affordable side. We've seen some more cool stuff come out recently in years to where we've got things like the Ace Galil in 308, the Scar 17, tons of different platforms, BNTs as well, but a pretty high dollar value. So we're going to talk about some affordable options for the Minuteman lifestyle because let's be real, most Minuteman stuff, while quality, we do want to be at the best price because we're not funded by the U.S. government. So some affordable options that you could run as a 308 battle rifle and some setups to think about whether you want to run them as a primary weapon or as a specialty role, whatever your flavor with that is. So first, let's just nail it down. What is a battle rifle that we're talking about? We are talking about a 308 caliber semi-automatic magazine-fed rifle. I don't care about barrel length. The ones you see here can be a little bit longer, but with more technology as stuff comes out, you see bullpups. There's battle rifle bullpups. There's 16-inch barrels. There's shorter guys that people can get away with, like an HK51, something like that. But we're going to generally say around a minimum of a 16-inch barrel. Again, that's not hard set in stone, but 308 semi-automatic magazine-fed. So the two examples I have of this today are going to be my M14, or rather, this is my Polytech M14S. This is a Norinco clone. I inherited this not too long ago. So this one, the main difference between this and a normal M14 you might notice is the muzzle device is kind of a faux muzzle device. The holes aren't cut through it. This came through during an import ban when you had to have certain restrictions on features. That is one thing I am going to replace over time. I have this one set up with a 1791 butt cuff, just kind of nice to get that cheek quiet rest on there, hold a few extra rounds, and get me aligned with my scope. My scope here on this is a primary arms 1-6. I can't remember what mount I have this on for those who are picky about this. And then this guy down here, this is a low pro mount from, I believe it's AMS Manufacturing. They were nice enough to send that out to me. So they are really cool for doing that. Didn't ask for a review or anything, or no money exchanged hands. I was like, hey, it's super cool. I'd like to take a look at it, and they send it out. So this is a 308 semi-automatic rifle. For those who are unaware or have been living under a rock, basically after the M1 Garand was phased out, the M14 was phased in. So this is, again, a Chinese variation, but the M14 was phased in. And it was actually the shortest lived service rifle ever in American history. So with this, it served about 5 years, if I remember correctly. I can't remember the exact dates. But basically, the idea behind this was as NATO transitioned to a 308 cartridge, this used 80% of the parts that were being used are currently by M1 Garands. So tooling it, spinning it up, and getting it ready and pumped out to the troops wouldn't be that hard. And the idea was basically, let's take an M1 Garand, make it magazine fed in a slightly smaller cartridge, going down from 30-06 to 308. So with this guy, you still have some really decent iron sights. You can watch Springfield M1A matches all day long. You can see people shooting precision rifle matches with these. There have been used in military service for a long time, all the way up through Iraq and Afghanistan with the M21 EBR chassis. There's tons of stuff out there that you can modify these with. But with this one, I kind of like the retro look and just adding the capability of adding the scope on here the way I have. You can potentially add lights, lasers, things like that on there. You can change out different furniture. But this is, again, just one example that is probably the most familiar to a lot of people out there. The other one I have, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about both of these later. So again, with this is a PTR91 HMK G3. You have your charging handle here on the side. You basically load this with your similar style as a MP5. You have your HK slap. With this, I have an aftermarket radar on here that allows me to add the flashlight I have on here, which I believe is a Streamlight. It's one of their Streamlight rifle lights. I've got a homemade light cover here with just the bikini cover of a red dot. Rubber bikini cover of a red dot and some electrical tape. It's kind of a homemade light cover. Fore grip here, simple sling. As far as optics, I'm rocking an Aimpoint Pro and a Juliet 4-power magnifier from SIG. One of the few things that SIG makes that doesn't go off on its own. This thing's semi-auto, just like the other one. This is more of a German design. The PTR91, I believe they're Turkish clones. So the only thing I will say with PTR, I've had pretty good luck with it. With that being said, when I first got this out of the box, I did have an issue with extraction. I ordered a $9 parts kit that had some extra springs and extra pieces and replaced that no problem, and I've had zero issues with this. The cool thing I like about the G3 platforms is these were kind of designed in post-war Germany. Things were still kind of tight money-wise. They're designed originally to shoot steel case. You can shoot brass. Doesn't really matter one way or the other. This thing will rip casings like crazy because of those fluted barrels. So not really much point that I can see from reloading. So if you want to shoot this just for funsies, you can go out and buy Steel Case 308 all day long. It's going to be run dirty. It's going to be gross, but you can shoot it. It is a dirty, dirty girl. With that, if you want to shoot brass, that's fine too. So I shot both of this, no problem. I bet nothing changed on the muzzle blast or anything like that. Good with these. You have, like I said, basically a giant MP5. For simplicity's sake. We've kind of given you two examples of like what to expect for battle rifles. Again, you could also have FALs. You could also have more modern stuff, such as SCAR 17s, the Desert Tech platforms, BNTs, there's tons of like AR-10s as well. The AR-10 would be a great option as well. And a lot more familiar, probably to ease of use for someone who's already operating the AR-15. So why choose the 308 over the 5.56? Well, for one, with 308, you do get a little bit longer standoff distance that you can have with your rifle platform as opposed to a 5.56. Now, with that, 5.56 can push out pretty far, especially with the right load and the right barrel length. But 308 can do it a little bit better, a little bit further, a little bit steadier, and it's a little bit more designed for shooting out of distance. Not saying that the 5.56 can't, but that the 308 can do it a little bit better. As we see armor systems becoming a little bit less popular and people going back to chest grades and things like this to stay on the move, be a little bit lighter, kind of a light fighter concept, it is interesting to kind of think about now that with not having to worry about plates, how much more damage could the 308 do versus the 5.56. So just something to consider with that as well. The other thing to think about is that as a modern Minuteman, the ability for the average team of modern Minuteman, prepared citizens, whatever you want to call it, whatever you and your guys are called, whatever your name is for that, the ability to simulate a squad weapon system, such as the civilian version of an IAR or the civilian version of the RPK, you're generally limited to FRTs. If someone does have full auto stuff, it's exorbitantly expensive. You're probably not realistically using it for something like that. But you are basically limited to like MCX by light uppers or some of the FRT triggers that are out there, some of the binary things that are out there, which can be exorbitantly expensive and sometimes can be kind of finicky. So while the average person may not necessarily be able to have access to something that can give them fire superiority and the number of rounds that can fire down range, one thing that you can get is potentially increasing your standoff distance. So with something like this, you do have the ability to shoot out a little bit further, a little bit farther, and kind of keep that other person a little further at bay than they normally otherwise would be. So whether, again, that's running it as a standalone system, as a primary, or running it as a secondary weapon or as a specialty weapon, that's going to be kind of up to you and your own SOPs on how you want to decide that, but it is something to think about. The other side of that, too, is I don't want to use the word knockdown power, but there's a lot of force coming out of a 308, right? The 308 cartridge is hitting with a lot of power. So that's another thing to consider as well. Well, you do have only about 2/3 the amount of ammunition in your magazine as you do on a 5.56 cartridge. You do have the ability to put something down with fewer rounds, potentially. There is the old adage that he who has more ammo wins, so that is something to consider, and we will get into that here in a little bit. But as something set up as kind of like just a normal fighting rifle or nothing, special, just something that if I were to set this up as a combat battle rifle, this is very similar to how I would set it up. I don't have nods yet, but when I do, I would set on the front here, I would have my emitter and I'd be able to set this thing up again for some typical tomfoolery. Now, one thing to consider as well, if you are running something like a PTR 91, is the sights are set very low here. They're about where my finger's at down here, and you do have your cheek rest here that sits pretty low. So you do kind of have almost a chin weld when you want to raise up here. You can get risers for these. You can make risers for these. I've seen people take pool noodles and goon tape and just wrap that thing up. I've seen people get their spur stocks that kind of make it more in line. There's a lot of different countries out there that have run this for a very long time. Sweden and Norway and Portugal are kind of the most famous for this. There's a lot of inspiration out there, kind of actually, and almost made this rifle a little bit around the idea of the Swedish Home Guard. My own variation of it. There's a lot that's not the same. Haven't gone around to it yet, but that was kind of the idea behind this: was a fighting rifle in a 308 caliber that is a viable caliber I can find anywhere, but also delivers a little bit more oomph than my 5.56 will. So this one again is set up as kind of a normal fighting rifle with this. It's an 18-inch barrel, so you do get a little bit better velocity. I didn't go the full 20-inch, and I didn't go the full 16. But 18 was good for me, and with this, again, I've used this a lot. The reload on this does take a little bit of getting used to if you're used to something like an AR-15 reload, and you don't need any last round bolt open. So this is a little bit dated system, but if you go with something more modern, again, like a SCAR 17, like some of the other platforms that are out there, you can get some pretty up-to-date stuff, some pretty modernized 308 stuff that's out there, and run a very viable rifle. So we'll get this out of the way, and I'll talk about some other use cases. So here we have, again, the M14. Again, this guy is set up with an LPV on here. I don't have a higher magnification scope yet, so that's one thing I want to do is upgrade the glass on this. So like I spoke a little bit earlier, there's tons of use case of this, both in a military setting as well as in a civilian setting, whether it be marksmanship competitions, all kinds of different things, 1,000-yard shooting, whatever you want to call it. So when it comes to battle rifles one thing to consider is that some can be incredibly accurate, some are more, minute of man. That being said, with my PTR 91, I'm usually getting about 3 MOA on average, depending on the ammunition that I'm running. That's fairly accurate enough for me for what I'm considering. Realistically, I'm probably, while I did talk about standout distance, I'm probably not engaging a target with that, with the optic set that I have past 400 yards at the range I can shoot out. I can shoot out to 400 yards. I can hit steel out there all day long with what I have currently. So I trust the ability to hit a man-sized target at that distance. But if I'm trying to drill the same hole, I'm not trusting my G3 necessarily to do that. So I have it set up as a battle rifle, not as a DMR. So with this, I have it set up a little bit more as a DMR. So with this is again my M14 that I have out, my Polytech M14. With this guy, I am going to upgrade the glass over time. That is the only limiting factor really here is the glass. But that being said, this one it's proven to be a lot more accurate, especially depending on the ammunition that I'm running through here. Even just running M80 ball, I have no problem with running that in through here. and getting really accurate groups as opposed to my G3. So this one I have set up a little bit more as a DMR. So while the G3 would be set up as kind of a primary 308 fighting rifle, this one is set up more as a specialized use case. So depending on how large of a group of people you have in your Minuteman group, whatever you want to call it, it's nice to have a little bit of speciality as the group grows and develops. Having someone who can reach out a little bit further, be a little bit more accurate, maybe a better shooter than some of the other people in the group, and deliver hits on targets at that distance to provide that standoff distance to give you the advantage in a potential firefight is a big thing to think about. So again, with this, not having necessarily anything to simulate the ability to lay down a lot of rounds rapidly, I have to come up with options that would allow me to engage targets further away than they can necessarily engage me at effectively. So this is one of those options. So with something like this, again, it actually is a little bit lighter than I have the G3 with, even with the woodstock and everything else. So that is kind of nice. But you can set these things up to be wildly accessorized, bipods, night vision, different optics, whatever, however you want to run it. Run it as an actual battle rifle setup like the first one, run it with irons, run it with optics, whatever you want. But I chose to do this as a DMR. So I think that's another really good use case for running a battle rifle, again, not necessarily as a primary, but as a specialized weapon system. So some of the cons, though, that you do have with this definitely come down to weight. So again, going back to my data defense, now, while I don't have like an accurate, like what is exactly does this weigh, I haven't necessarily put it on a scale. Just from carrying it around, I can tell you that even with all this crap on here, it's probably a little closer to the M14, but still underneath it. It's still lighter than running my M14. That's running with the heavy suppressor on the front and all of the accoutrement on here. So you do have to worry a little bit more about weight. That being said, you can always go to the gym. Look, I'm not the strongest dude out there. I've got a little bit of a dad bod, but if I can carry this all day out in the woods, going through hikes and things like that, so can you. If the weight does bother you, that's one of the reasons why not to run it. That's understandable, but you can always hit the gym. The more you carry the rifle, the lighter it's going to get because the stronger you're going to be. Now, that might sound kind of boomer, but that's where I'm at with this. So the other thing to think about ultimately, though, is with your gear that you're running, is weight is going to be an issue. So with that, ounces equal pounds, things like this, right? So for the same weight, when it comes to ammunition, you could probably carry, well, you're already carrying 10 more rounds in an AR-15 magazine than you are in a 308 mag. So if you're running a 308 system if you're running a 5.56 system and it has 10 magazines, you're probably for the same weight, maybe only running 7 for something like this. So that is a consideration, is that your weight, it becomes a lot heavier. I could be a little bit off on the weight, but it will be a lot heavier than running a 5.56 platform. So if you're not used to that and you throw all your gear on with 308 stuff now, it might take some getting used to for that extra weight. That's the other side of that as well, is the ability to carry extra magazines. So with an AR-15, I usually have most of my setups that I've shown on this channel before. You can go check out the videos on those. They're usually running around 10 magazines. With some of my AR-15 stuff, I'll have a link to my belt kit video somewhere up top over here. If you guys want to see my battle rifle belt kit video, I'm able to fit, I use a saw pouch, 200 round saw pouch that can hold 5 vertically set 308 magazines, whether they're the M14 mags or whether they're the PTO 91 mags. And then on the other side, I have a double mag AR pouch. Now, normally that thing would hold 4 AR magazines, but it's only going to hold 2 of my 308 mags because of how wide they are. Now, one thing I have found from a company called Spectre, which is really cool, and again, not sponsoring anything, just giving some advice, is these universal mag pouches that I have set up on my plate carrier. Now, the magazines I run on my plate carrier, these are universal magazines, so they'll run either 308 or 5.56. I've had really good luck with them. So they hold my 5.56 mags really good with great retention, and then they can fit my 308 mags really well as well. And I just tighten up the retention strap a little bit when they're in there because they do sit a little bit shorter, but they work great every way for either magazine. That as well, the old Vietnam style pouches, this is a Marine Corps triple mag pouch. This works really well. It will hold only 2 magazines though for 308. So what I found, for example, on this setup, I have 3 in the front here and 3 in this pouch. That's a total of 6 magazines on this setup. With that, though, when I run 5.56, I can fit 6. When I run 308, I can only fit 5. So that is a consideration that you do have less ammunition. Now, if it's a specialized role that you're filling, that's not necessarily a bad thing as much, because you can have other people carry ammunition to support that platform, or you could know that, like, for example, if you're running a DMR, the idea is you're making more accurate hits. Potentially, you might not need as much ammunition as the normal guy with his 5.56 rifle, but there are ways that you could find extra ways to carry ammunition. So with that, the issue that you may run into the most when running a 308 battle rifle is going to be ways to carry your ammunition, because 308 specific gear can be, one, challenging to find, or two, really expensive. But if you're comfortable with going the surplus route, you can get a lot of really good stuff really cheap. I'm not going to spend a huge time diving into this because I've done plenty of videos on it. And again, some of those will be up here and you can check those out. But just some quick options that can help you carry magazines. This is a Chinese Type 63 Chi-Com rig. Basically, think of a TAPS rig before it was cool, but for just ammunition, right? So this here is 7 cells. You can run 308 magazines. And here I currently have my G3 mags with some homemade pull tabs I put on them. These things work really well for running 308 magazines, and they fit very flat to the body. So you can run these with belt kit, with make a placard out of them, a little bit of homemade, a little bit of home ec, and you can run some buckles and a few things and make this into a really nice chest rig. I actually have a video coming out soon of me doing that to a SMG rig. They have this for my Scorpion. So this really good option to be able to run something like that. These things are dirt cheap. You can get them on Amazon for like 15 to 20 bucks all day long. Definitely under $30 if prices have come up. I think last time I saw one, like a really good one in really good shape, it's like 20 bucks. So you can get these all day long for something like that. Another really good, cool thing you can run all day long that I call my tactical man purse is this is a Chi-Com drum mag pouch for an AK. Basically, it's almost like a saw pouch, but on a strap. So with that, pop this bad boy open, and I have 5 G3 magazines in here. So if you wanted to make like a quick grab and go kit, like a Minuteman bag or something like this, you could throw that on there. You do have a pouch for whatever you want to throw in there, whether it be pistol mags, radio, whatever. But I kind of have this set up as kind of a grab and go type of deal, to where for some reason I have to grab my battle rifle and run out the door. I have 5 magazines ready to roll, and it's kind of a quick resupply type of idea. Again, super cheap Chi-Com options. With that, you can always get things like this is a real cheap Rhodesian rig. It's a knockoff Rhodesian FAL rig from Amazon. Works really well. Again, I have links to my full breakdown of my full belt kit that you guys have seen on the channel before, so I'm not going to go too digging into that and cover all my tablespoons. But again, kind of the idea here is just something to think about when it comes to weapon choice. If you already have a 5.56 and you already run, there's no problem with that. I'm not saying go out and you have to buy a 308. This is more of a consideration of that. The battle rifle, I think, is not a dead concept. It is interesting to see the U.S. military go back to things like the XM7. Granted, we have all heard the rumors about from SIG, one way or the other, about its viability. I wouldn't trust SIG right now as far as I could throw them. That's why I wore my FN hat, not my SIG hat. Didn't want you guys to think I actually gave a shit. So with that, the XM7 is an interesting idea that we're kind of going back to this idea of battle rifles, of smaller magazine size, heavier calibers, things like that. Now, I do seem to find there's a bit of a generational thing as well, versus the 308 versus the 5.56. And a lot of it's really going to depend, too, also on where you're at. If you're in a more urban setting, I see no reason why you necessarily need a 308 over a 5.56. Where I'm at, I am in a much more rural part of the country, in a much more rural part of Idaho, in a very mountainous area. With that, there are a lot of large animals out here, a lot of 4-legged threats that can be taken down with 308. You might want a 308-4. With that as well, there's also a lot of distance. Whether it be from mountaintops, across mountaintops to be shooting, or whether it be very long straight pathways down the valleys in between these mountains. Where I'm at, basically, we're surrounded by mountains, we live in the valleys between. So there's a lot of open space that could be covered with something like this or shooting at distance. So with that, the idea of running a battle rifle makes a lot of sense in that context for me, where I'm probably more likely to try to take a long range shot to keep something at bay than I am to be fighting door to door or something like that. So again, if this works for you, that's fantastic. If not, just food for thought. This is not the end all do all, but I'm a big fan of battle rifles. One, they're very aesthetically pleasing. I'm a huge Cold War nerd when it comes to the rifle design. I think it's really interesting to dive into the thinking of a country and the people at a time as to why they came up with the weapon that they did when other systems were out there. Why did they go with this? Why did they go their own way? You want to dive into the M14, there's all kinds of videos out there that you can find. Go check out the call on either of these guns to kind of dive into the history of these. But there's some really cool stuff that you can learn out there from a lot of this. So guys, that's just going to about wrap it up for this. Again, if you tell me down in the comments what you guys think about running a battle rifle in the modern setting. Does it make sense? Does it not? Are there scenarios in which you would pick a battle rifle over others? Are there ones where you wouldn't? Again, taking in size, weight, ammo compatibility, things like this all into consideration. Would you still run a modern AR-15 tricked out, or maybe a more modern style battle rifle? Would you go back to something like this? Tell me in the comments what you guys think down below, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.